Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Suzette, and this is God Talk. Hey, guys. Um, it's June 19th, and we are going to talk about the heroes and the history of Juneteenth. And can you give me that title again, Craig? Because I've let go of it in my brain.
Juneteenth, Pride and Power, celebrating Black LGBTQIA plus history.
Great. Thank you. So that's our discussion topic for tonight, and I find each of the people that we're going to talk about super interesting. Um, I guess we'll do our quick icebreaker thingy. If you don't have an icebreaker, then I'll have to think of one real quick, but let's see if Leo has one for us.
Yes, you want to read it? No.
Name, pronouns, and then answer this question.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leo. Pronouns are he, him. And today's icebreaker is, what song do you sing super loud in the car when no one's around? For me, it has to be Lady Gaga's new song, Abracadabra.
Okay, that's a good song.
Let me see. Hi, everybody. My name's Jared. Pronouns are all of the above and also sick. And let me see. The songs that I generally play, I sing in my car is, so there's that one Lizzo song. That goes, "Are you ready to be loved?" Right? Yeah, I love that song, right? And it's like my ringtone for like everything, and it like destroys my husband, and everyone around me, and also my clients. But I don't care, because when they're not around, when they're around, I sing it.
Okay, so who wants to go next? Hello. How about Lynn? Lynn, you can go next.
Oh, okay. I'm Lynn, she, her. And I really don't have one song. I mean, I grew up in, in an era where with the Motown and the Temptations and the Four Tops and Gladys Knight and the Pips. So there's hardly a song that can come on that I'm not singing loud with. Just in that era of music, I don't have just one. Probably though, if I had to pick, it'd be "I Heard It Through the Grapevine"
Ooh,
I
by
like
Gladys
that
Knight and the
song.
Pips.
Yeah, I like that. I like
Because
that.
that's one of the ones that we used to perform when I was on stage, and so I was a Pip, so I always sing that one whenever I hear
I love that. I was a Pip.
it. Yeah, I was a Pip.
I'm never gonna think of you the same.
It's been so many years ago. Trust
Uh,
me, many years ago. Yeah.
okay. All right. How about Kim?
Uh, Kim, she, her. My one that I really crank up and sing loud to is "Drift Away" by Dobie Gray. And I go between three channels, and it's played on all three channels, so I'm constantly going between them to see if it'll come on one of them. And then the other one I like to sing real loud to is the chorus for "American Pie" by Don McLean.
Mm-hmm.
And because I remember that from from my youth.
Yep.
So those are mine.
I remember waiting. My mom would had a part-time job, and that was before online banking a million trillion years ago. We had a station wagon, and so she would have to go pick up her check on Saturdays. And so we drove in the station wagon. I don't even remember if it had air conditioning or not, but we would sit in the car and wait for her while she went in to get her check, and it was usually a long time. And that song was playing, and I just remember me and my three brothers singing the chorus of it. So that made me have a nice memory. I love that. All right. And Craig, if you can help creak out a
Kreger, he and they, and since we are doing LGBTQIA plus history, I'm gonna roll with my girl Gloria Gaynor. At first,
mhm.
I was afraid. I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side.
That's so classic. I love that. I love that. Um, yeah, I'm Suzette, she, her, and hopefully I got everybody. I think I have five on the screen here. So, um, and then Jared reminded me of Lizzo, and I made a Spotify list last night for my work, and I put on there Lizzo's Good as Hell. That's like probably one I can't like scream that song loud enough, right? I like it. I like it. All right. So we're gonna get started with our conversation. And what I wanted to do was I put in the chat some resources if you wanted to look at stuff. So the first resource we're gonna talk about is there's two gentlemen. Bayard Rustin, I think everybody knows who Bayard Rustin is. He was a civil rights organizer and nonviolence strategist, and he was an openly gay activist, and he helped put together the 1963 March on Washington, and he was a close advisor to Martin Luther King. And he was minimized in that role because of who he was. But I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Bayard. Have you seen that? It's really powerful. I watched it. I put the link in the chat on how you can watch it. Um, I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix if you have Netflix, but um, part of the movie just alluded a tiny little bit to them, he and Martin Luther King kind of being a little more closer than just advisor and advisee, that there might have been more to that. And, we'll never know. But it was interesting that during that time in history, you know, again, it was the intersectionality of being a Black person and being an activist, that was the time when we all seemed to have found our voices, I guess. And his tenacity and his will and inner strength to make it just happen was what just totally floored me and wowed me. There's not many people in the world that can just do something. They don't say no. They don't ask permission. They just do it. And he just had a way that made him a leader. So I thought the movie was worth watching. So if you want to watch it, it's in there. So does anybody have a memory of something they know about Bayard Rustin, or one of his quotes that I looked at said, "We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers." And that's how I see Leo and Jared. They are our angelic troublemakers because they're going to put out these little, like on the new next gen little channel we have, the videos he put out, and I just go, wow, that they're very thought-provoking, and I love it. That's kind of why I wanted to open up that group, because the other groups are a little stuffy, and this is a place where you can just let it all hang out. And there may be a few cuss words in there, there may be a lot of cuss words in there, but I think we are finding our voices again, and we're in a historical time in history, or a time in history when people are finding their voices again and feeling like they need to say something. It's not okay. It's not okay to just not say something. And I myself, I'm not really an activist person. I don't see that in myself, but there's parts of me that want to go protest. There's parts of me that, that are willing to go stand out in a hot place, or, walk a little bit, or, carry a sign and do these things. So while, there are protests going on in the city, a lot of them I just don't know about what's happening. So if you have some information on something that's happening, it would be great to know about it and share it in that group. And I just got something from Bob tonight, Bob Stubblefield, about what's happening to our healthcare, the Medicaid healthcare stuff that's going on, and I'm creating a video and putting that online so that we can contact our legislators and make sure that we use our voices to protest, because it is definitely affecting um, uh, trans children who are in that process of being cared for with uh, supporting medicine and things that will help them mentally, emotionally, and physically maintain who they are as people. So we're losing something really important. So I'm going to share that online. The next person that I looked at was Marsha P. Johnson. And while I've heard the name quite a bit, I didn't really know a whole lot about Marsha P. Johnson. Does anybody here know about Marsha P. Johnson? She died before most of us, most of you guys were probably born, or at least Jared and Leo.
Is she a Stonewaller? Stonewaller?
hmm hmm yeah. And I was trying to find a way to share that with you. You don't see anything in the chat, probably because I put it in there before I started the meeting. So I'll recopy those and share them with you. So this is the Bayard Rustin movie. Tell me if you can see it. You see
Now I
that?
can. Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, great. Um, I was looking for a movie, and then they had that Stonewall movie that came out. It was kind of like a musical. Did y'all watch that? That was kind of interesting, and I couldn't really get into it. So I was looking for a different way to find more history about Stonewall. And while again, I hear stories about it, and I've never really like d dived into what exactly happened. I do now know, after looking around, what happened at Stonewall. But again, it was a historic time when we had a voice, and people that were not speaking up, or who were trained not to speak up, were breaking their silence. So I have a hand from Jared and Leo.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to share that in the book club on Wednesdays,
Mhm.
we're currently reading the that book. The
I wish I could do that.
uh, it's a really good book.
It
I had
is.
never read it.
Mhm. And it's basically just
Different stories.
yes, a collection of stories from people who were out and about during the Stonewall riots time period.
Mhm.
If there's like a before the riots, there's like a during the riots, and then there's like a after the riots section, basically, where all the stories are categorized based on the to sort of weave together a continuity of events um, that tells like the many different perspectives of what happened during those riots, and it was pretty cool. It
Yeah.
is pretty cool. I could share that book with you if that
Yeah,
or with
that'd be
everyone,
great.
like
I think I'm going on a trip next week, so maybe I'll have some car time where I can read. Um, but what I think was the most impactful visual things for me about Stonewall was when they would show video of police dragging people and beating them, and like they had a right, like we were lesser than, and they had it was, you know, a lot of our country is trying to erase history, and I think that's the most important thing that we have to do, and that's powerful, is if we help preserve it and make sure that the next generation has access to those things, because um it's just not okay. And I keep waiting for, when is enough going to be enough? And, yesterday's Supreme Court ruling, and, it's just like I can hardly wait to get to this night of the week so that I can like pour my heart out and talk about those things that happened this week that I'm in disbelief about. And it's just, again, we're in a time of history where we have to use our voices. So, but I have Marsha P. Johnson was born in 1945 and lived until 1992. Was a Black trans woman and a drag performer who played a leading role in the Stonewall Uprising. She devoted her life to advocating for homeless, queer, and trans youth and people living with HIV. Her work laid the foundation for trans rights activism today. And the quote that I found of hers was, "No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." So that's a big sentence. Um, so we can talk about pride and we can talk about activation or we can talk about rising up, but until all of us have been liberated, it feels like we can't have any of it. So does anybody have a thought about Marcia? Or I think that the work with HIV people is super important because there was a point in time, and I remember that we weren't supposed to touch or get near or care for or assimilate with people with HIV. So I can only imagine the Black community at that time, what was happening there, because there was probably no medical care. There was probably nothing that they could do to take care of themselves, to feed themselves, to have whatever medical care they needed. So it's um it's pretty impactful, and it's not that long ago. We're still living in like I had a teacher in school that said, this is the earth, and they held out like a tape measure, right? And it's like, this is us, one tick on the tape measure of where we are. And we think we're so advanced and we think, we know it all and, that there's nothing more we can learn, but we have so much that came before and we have to preserve it. So the next person that I found was Audre Lorde. And I think I liked Audre Lorde because again, I took a course in college on intersectionality, and we didn't get to this section of society. We didn't get to the gay, lesbian, activist, Black woman, um, who was making history with things, and she was a poet. And I think for myself, I have the most awe for people like this because it's like they have this like superpower for creating prose around things that are difficult and things that we maybe don't understand. And so they take words and they make them uh, come to life and in ways that creates emotion. So listening to her and her voice and her canter and her, the confidence in her voice was what really struck me as being a beautiful thing. So I have a video of her and I'm going to play that video. So I need to share my screen and hopefully I'll make it work right. Let's see. I know I can do this. Hang on. Share. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
times, it can be challenging to find the right words to speak out against injustice. However, for author Audre Lorde, staying silent was never an option. Referring to herself as a Black, lesbian, mother, warrior poet, Lorde's courage made her a writer who represented her community. Born in New York in 1934, Lorde was raised in Harlem by Caribbean parents. Although they worked hard, they were emotionally distant from her. She was a quiet and withdrawn child, spending most of her time reading poetry. Through these poems, she could express her true self, enabling her to communicate more clearly with others. She often spoke in poetry verses to convey her feelings rather than everyday speech to reveal how she felt. When she ran out of poems that reflected her feelings, she started to write her own. Her debut piece in 17 magazine was more than just a feat. It validated her writing abilities. In 1954, Lorde left the U.S. for the National University of Mexico. She embarked on a journey of self-discovery where she embraced her identity as a lesbian and an artist. In the 1960s, Lorde began to publish her poetry in magazines and often used her words to help in the civil rights, anti-war, and women's liberation movements. In the 1970s, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and would later go on to write about her battle in the cancer journals, which fueled her activism and sharpened her focus. Audre Lorde was a trailblazing writer who believed that only by coming together in solidarity as women, regardless of our differences, could we overcome systemic discrimination. In her book, Sister Outsider, she articulated this vision through a collection of essays, which still resonates today. Meanwhile, her biomythography, Zami, A New Spelling of My Name, redefines storytelling by blending her life experiences with elements of ancient mythologies. Today, the collected poems of Audre Lorde serves as an enduring testament to her vision, urging us to challenge the systemic inequalities of race, gender, and sexuality in our society. Audre Lorde used her voice to reject silence and fight for fairness. Her words speak to a new generation of activists who follow in her footsteps. How do you think Lorde's poetry makes a difference in the lives of her readers?
So that was just a little more history on somebody else that we don't want to forget, right? Um, I think it's important to continue discussions. And I was thinking about, well, here was these historical people, who are we listening to today? So I guess that's where I was going to transition the conversation to, who have you heard in this modern time that has a voice like that? Um, Unfortunately, I'm not in that kind of a world. So while it really appeals to me to get deeper into these kinds of things, I haven't done it in my whole life. So this is like new territory for me. And I can't I start thinking, oh, I'm a victim of white privilege, you know, because I had too much filter. I had too much filter growing up. And I do remember as a child in school, I was in school in the 1960s, that we did have separate water fountains. We didn't use separate water fountains, but they were there in the building. They were left over, and separate lavatories, and so we didn't have any children of color in my school, so I don't know who those lavatories were for. We didn't have any children of color in my town at all. And that makes me really sad because I was born in Brooklyn, so that's on the melting pot of our history. And the only real history I have is with the Italian Americans. So I'm missing like a huge part of who America is. And I think it's really important that we open ourselves up to, you know, you guys are much more um, ingrained in the fiber of these things than I am. So it makes me feel like, maybe I'm not qualified to talk about this stuff. I mean, I'm having a conversation about intersectionality, and I'm outside the circle looking in. So. What can you say? What can you bring to the table that would make someone like me feel like I could do more? Or what can I do to learn more, um, and expose myself to? I mean, I'm all about trying to, taking on a protest when that time is right. But anyway, guys, what is up, Jared and Leo?
So Suzette, it's me. Uh, I've noticed over the time that we've known each other that you are doing the work, right? That you are doing the work of deconstructing the upbringing that brought us trauma, that you are doing the work of, naming your privilege in spite of the tragic backstory, which actually is really hard, I find, like historically speaking, for people with hard lives, right? To be able to pinpoint the sections that are like, wait, but it wasn't hard there, right? Like, but this is privilege here, right? And like that's bad, that's badass. And because like having that, doing that work makes it to where you are a safer place for people of color, right? Because like I said in the last one, I don't really trust people who aren't doing the work, because like of the governing structure. And if you're a person of color, you shouldn't either, because of the fact that there are so many underlying problems with the forces that raise us, right? And if you're not undermining and figuring out, well, where does that fit in my life, which biases, and you're not deconstructing biases, it's scary. So Suzette, like, first in a pro, because like that's not an easy task, actually. That's like the hardest part, actually, is what you've been doing since I met you. So like don't disqualify that, because everything else after that, everything that's about to come out of my mouth is easy. Right? Because like usually I start off with do the work, right? And you are, so this part's gonna be easy. So yes, as a white person, a white female, a lot of times y'all find yourself in the closest proximity to people in positions of power, right? You may not find yourself in close proximity to like the most protest spaces without having friends like us, right? But you will find yourself more likely to be able to fit into those spaces, and using that privilege, right? Using that that space to be the voice in those spaces, right? Is so important, right? It is the most necessary thing, because behind every single successful sociopath has always been a white woman.
Well, and we are enablers. We're enablers.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
whenever you use it, you weaponize that fact, and I mean fact.
Yeah.
Right? You turn,
it's true.
right? You turn the tides. Also, even if you aren't like in like comfortable with participating in protests, which I mean, I could see you in a protest, girl. Like,
I'm not uncomfortable with it. I'm like, yeah, give me a sign. I want to do it. I've never done it. I want to do it.
Yeah, there are so many things, because like even if like let's say you develop health problems or you have health problems, right? Can you cook? If you can cook, then you can bring stuff, right? If you can't cook, even if you can't cook, right? You can buy water bottles and distribute them, right? You can always buy supplies and distribute them. Do you have masks, right? As protests get more and more violent, masks become more and more important, right? Like there are so like most anti like de-arresting tactics like whenever you're dealing with forces like of like government structures like ICE, like just the normal police, right? They don't require intense physical labor, right? Like usually, like if they're abducting people and they're putting them in a van, and you sit in that van, and other people sit in that van, right? And it's like a 6-person van, and there's 6 people already in that van. Where how are they? They may have hold of the person, right, that they're about to traffic, right? Um, but like, where how are they gonna? Right? Like there are so many de-arresting tactics that exist, like being verbal and using your white voice, right? To be able to like name things that are happening and speak truth to power, and speak at and speak with these people in these positions of authority, because you are more likely to be seen and heard, right? Like you are less likely to be shot by a less lethal round in the head, right? Because that's currently happening in LA right now.
It's very scary.
Yeah, yeah. It is a huge boon that you have already done the work, Suzette, though, right? Because I wouldn't tell you to do anything that I just said until you are actively in the act of deconstructing, right? Because you can do so much unintentional harm, right? If you don't know the ways that your privilege creeps into revolutionary spaces, right? Just look at what happens so often with any form of revolutionary movement.
Yeah.
Right? It's the internal sabotaging of assuming that these people have done the work that causes these movements to go from defund the police to give me scholarship money. Right? Like
I spent 7 years helping create a documentary film called Pioneers in Skirts, and I've talked about it a couple times. And it was about women not having equal rights for women. But over the 7 years, it took us from these different places of, it feels so like it's such a bigger story than that, And when I got involved with it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to Hollywood and make a documentary. And I got to walk the red carpet and all that stuff. And it was like, when I got done, I was like, that didn't feel satisfying. It didn't feel like I did anything. It didn't feel like I broke anything. It just was like, it was like fluffy noise that was like, I think there's so many more deeper things that we need to get into before we talk about, the boardroom, who's at the table in the boardroom. So I would never admit that to the 2 friends that spent their life, doing that film, because it was an important conversation at the time. But now that I look back on it, I think, man, I missed it. I missed something else that I could have, anyway, I'm not ashamed that I did that documentary, but it was, I've seen so many more things, that are worthy. So again, I'm not too old to get involved, and I'm not too old to think, well, I'm gonna just sit in my easy chair and my recliner every day and watch the news, and oh gosh, isn't that awful? What are we gonna do about it? That's not where I'm at in my life. So the next time you guys lace up your boots, let me know. Mhm.
there's
So
supposed to be another No Kings protest July 4th, right? So yeah.
I think I'll be here.
Mhm. You should be.
Let's talk. So, Lynn, have you done a protest in your lifetime? The only thing I've ever done was held a candle outside the church when George Floyd was murdered. And, that was profound to me. That was profound. That picture that we have of everybody standing in the rain with their candles, That was profound to me. And that was my first thing ever. And I'm like, oh God, this is so important, you know. But what have you experienced, Lynn, to bring activism into your life?
Well, I've never participated in an LGBTQ act of activism unless you count going to the parade every year down on Westheimer. um,
I've done that too.
and I think I thought the first time that I went that was an act of activism because it was the parade for me at that time, at that age, was I'm here and I'm proud, you know, and there's
It feels
nothing
like
you
a
could.
protest,
Yeah,
you
it
know, it
feels like a
does a little
protest. It
bit.
does, because it's secluded. You know, it's not like the whole city involves in. You know, like the other kinds of parades that you see down, you know, the streets. But the Pride Parade was what I think of in terms of protest.
Mhm.
Um, but before that, as a child of the civil rights movement, um, I remember in my 20s in Nacogdoches, Texas, believe it or not, which is where I did undergrad, protesting police brutality. And I look back on that now and think, my God, in Nacogdoches, where
Very
where
scary.
it was scary, but I wasn't scared at the time. It was, you know, we were college students, and the sheriff's name was Roebuck. That's what I can remember his last name. And we marched around the county courthouse. You know, some police had abused some black community. We now, mind you, we lived on campus,
Mhm.
but there was activity. We're college students, and the person who had been injured by the police was a member of, you know, the city of Nacogdoches, that community. And some we got all stirred up and just decided that there was going to be a march because there was police brutality. We thought it was unfair, and so we did that for about a week,
Mhm.
you know, a couple days. And I look back on it now and think, my goodness, God does protect us, doesn't he? Because that city, I knew when I went to Stephen F. That blacks were in a minority at the college, a small minority, and but I was a member of the Black Student Union, and you know, I mean, it was just like that was the thing to do. So political protest, yes, police brutality, and that was about 1971 or two, somewhere along in there. And that is the probably the most dangerous incident that I've ever come to. But there
Mhm.
were lots of us, and so we felt pretty good about that. The NAACP, you know, was there. So political protests, yes. LGBTQ, not so much. But I think that is a result of, you know, moving to Houston and getting a job and
Mhm.
worried about, you know, being outed or possibly losing your job,
Mhm. That was
and
a scary thing
it
too.
was a scary
Yeah.
thing. And I at the first job I had in Houston, well, the first real job I had in Houston, I was the only black. So I was already in a weird kind of situation. However, the lady who hired me, um, we have been friends since then. And she realized I told her she found out I was gay, and she
Mhm.
never judged me for that, and I cherish that friendship uh, even now. But so I was in a precarious position, I have to say. I needed a job because I there was no one to take care of me, so I had to worry about my job. I worried about the apartment that I lived in at the time being gay and having a partner and
So
all of that.
sad.
Yeah,
You
that
had
was
to
in the
have the
70s.
fear.
There were no sexual harassment laws. And
Hmm.
so, I had to fight guys off at the copy machine. And,
Yeah.
that was also the days of two martini lunches. So, we actually would go to lunch at, and have a couple of drinks and then go back to work.
I do
So
that every day.
yeah, so it was a different time for me, but protest has always been in my heart. I am a writer, and so I have written letters through the years to the Houston Post, to the Houston Chronicle, talking about issues that touched my heart, and I have all of those filed away. So there's never been an issue that I didn't speak out on, but usually I wrote about it, a letter to the editor, and
That's
I'd have to
powerful
say,
too, though,
yeah.
because you're speaking to the masses. It's the one
Yeah.
to many. But if any of you knew Reverend Vicky, that woman was a closet protester. She was always making you do stuff without you really know you were doing it, like I do remember, and it's a vague memory in my head, but when Sandra Bland was killed, she had a bunch of us drive in a van to wherever the courthouse was, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing it because Vicky was doing it. But some of that rubs off on you, and again, I didn't know enough, but I do know that a group of people went from the church to I guess it was a bridge in is it Mississippi or there's pictures of people at the bridge where they did the march across the bridge. See, I'm really not very good with that
Oh,
historical.
Selma?
The Selma Bridge, yeah. And they went to a museum there, and I remember the pictures that Vicky brought back, and it was like pictures of the gallows or the things in that museum that were horrifying. So Reverend Mona's on the call. Does Reverend Mona have any kind of protesting or any radicalness in you that we don't know about? Let's hear about it.
Look
We
at
need to
Jeremy
hear
now
about it.
shaking his. Yes, I took the bus to the first March on Washington and, where they had the AIDS blanket. That was very sad. I marched in Houston twice against Anita Bryant. So
Oh wow,
twice.
wow.
And of course, I've been in 4 of the parades here against fighting for our rights and the defeat of the laws at that time that were against us, having to do with our private lives and our private homes. Um, so, golly, um, I marched a lot during those days because I was young and I was able to do it. And I came from a family of biracial, a biracial marriage and religion. So, and handicap, we had special needs. So my family taught us that my mother taught us we were all equal, all equal. And so when I got into the world and it wasn't that way, then I
Mm.
fought that we were all equal. And so, yeah, I've carried flags. Uh,
Did
um,
you burn your bra?
no, I didn't burn my bra. Um, didn't burn my bra. Yeah, I was the black sheep and I was out there in the streets and protesting anytime that we were able to protest here in Houston and and in Washington D.C. So I was lucky that Virginia Galloway, who was a founding member of Resurrection, paid my way to my seat on the bus to go to the rally in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And I had just become a new deacon. I mean, I had just become a new deacon. And we had communion on the bus and, and then, I didn't know what I was doing or what I was getting in there. And I saw Jerry and Harvey and I saw Troy Perry and I was so excited. I mean, I was just loving it because I was amongst the community that was there.
Historical.
And so, the bus broke down. And this was a time when you could get fired at your job. And I had already asked for those days off and they had told me no. But my partner at the time, I called her and told her, I said, call me in sick. And so she did. And I thought I would be back in time, but the bus broke down. So, I didn't get fired and they didn't really question me about where I had been, but it was a difficult time because I thought I was going to get fired and I couldn't tell anybody where I had been
Yeah.
to that. But it was very memorable time. Glad I did it. Um, Wish I could do it now, but my God, the heat the other day, just going from Kroger, little Kroger over in the Heights, from the parking lot to the store, I thought I was gonna pass out and faint. I mean, at
Yeah.
70 now, it just zaps me. I mean, my battery pack just goes from 100% to 0 in no time. So I can't do it anymore, but my spirit is still there.
Yeah.
Because I know how society was, and even though my dad is Hispanic or was Hispanic, we had the prejudice of a neighbor saying that my sister couldn't come out and play with the neighbor because her stepdad was Hispanic, was a Mexican, wasn't Hispanic, was a Mexican, and so therefore, you know, my mother told us, "Don't go down there." We cannot do that, and so. Um, and then, the church, the big church was not so favorable because we were offspring of a biracial marriage. And so were always made to feel less than
Mhm.
because you were a child of a biracial marriage. And so, it was only Mexican and white, but it was enough to cause a big problems at that time in history. So you have to take all of that into consideration.
But we got real comfortable, didn't we, with everything being okay, right? And then all of a sudden nothing was okay. And they pulled the rug out from under us this year, and it's
Well, we're
just
going to have to fight again. I mean, because
yes.
we're going to have to fight for what we
It's
had fought before, and we're going to have to do it again. And unfortunately, we're just going to have to do it again. Um,
Well,
this time
everything
we have to do it from a wheelchair, but we're just to have to do it again.
everything was okay until the black guy got elected president twice. And it
But
really
thank you for
just
asking.
started to go downhill there.
so I think Jared has something to say.
I think that I think it's super important for the context of this conversation to look at how common protest work is, right? And distance ourselves from the popular narrative that it's saviors like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, like Marsha P. Johnson, like all these people, some Messiah is gonna come, right? And deliver us, and with Donald Trump's head, oh sorry, the orange one's head on a pike, right? Like these like narratives where we idolize people, revolutionary figures, right? It's so colonial, right? Because it's like it creates these like hierarchies in black spaces, and I don't know about you, Lynn, but like hierarchies in black spaces usually ends in dictators, revolutions, and a lot of death, right? And so it's like like centering ourselves, and like what we do, what we can do, how we can like move, right? And decentering like prolific like heroes, right? so important, because for us, it makes us feel like I could never do that, right? It makes us feel like our role is less important than the person who threw the first brick at Stonewall, right? It makes us feel like our role really doesn't, matter, when like everyone, like, like Mona, Lynn, Suzette, y'all are all about that life, right? You could easily throw another brick at the
And it
next.
hurts me to think, I might be hated because of who you know what I mean? Like, it's all crazy. It's all crazy. None of it works. And we just have to remember that love is the binding factor in all of this, and that we just got to find a way to just love each other. And I see Lynn has a hand up. Did you
It's
want?
something that I like to say all the time. You will never meet another human being who is not made in the image of God. And
Mhm.
so if we lead with that, kind of like lead with love all the time, the difficulty is for you, what you're talking about, privilege. And I remember in the protest, I wasn't afraid. I never was afraid. It, it was dangerous. I'm looking back on it now as a you know then and now, but I wasn't afraid at the time. It just it is, and I don't think that protesters are, who who in our hearts know when something is wrong. Kind of like Reverend Mona said, when you know it's wrong, then you have to stand up and you have to do something about it. And I think that I hear that spirit in you, and go do it.
You
Just
know
go
what?
do
Like I have this like this persona in my brain about like maybe it's 30 years ago and I have more tattoos and I'm not so put together and maybe I need a shower and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna change the world. When I was growing up, they had something called the Peace Corps, and I was,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. And I didn't do it. I should have done it, and it's like, don't get to this point in your life and say, I shoulda, I shoulda, I shoulda. So, being me doesn't mean me is done.
Yeah.
Me means, I can still support you. I can give you money. I can give you water bottles, like you said. I can do something to make it work. So, but one more question from Jared and Leo.
Yes, I have to say that we've attended the most recent one. That was our second protest that me and my husband have attended. I would have to say that I was so, I don't know what's the right word, just I was so I don't know, just I don't know what the right word is, but it surprised me of how many different cultures were there,
Mm-hmm.
many different age groups were there,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so enlightened to,
Baby carriages. I heard there were people with
yeah,
baby
yeah,
carriages.
and just all walks of life, and I don't know, it just made me feel very encouraged to, yeah, like you said, not stand on the sidelines and just watch it happen. And I even, I, I've even made a plan
Mama.
with with uh, with Jared and Liam and Drew, to where I tell them, like, if anything was to happen, I'll probably be the first one to get arrested. So I'm gonna have a free trip to Mexico. So y'all make sure y'all come and get me.
Please don't say that. No. But you're the most surprising. Like, I don't know you as long as I've known other people here, but you have surprised me the most. Like, never in a billion years, from that person that was sitting in those talks that we had, the discovery talks or whatever, and you guys were sitting at a table and saying, "How come I didn't know about this? How come I didn't know this was here?" And it was just like they're just the quiet little couple, and it's like, oh no, we got way more than that. We got the whole kit and caboodle with these two. So you're going to take us down a new path. I see it. I see it's a path that we've needed to open up for a really long time. And with Liam and Drew and everyone that's been part of the explosive growth of Next Gen and all the adults who want to hang on your coattails like me, and say, go do it. You're going to change the world, and I'm going to be right here to be that person that encourages you. And when things don't go right, or maybe you're disappointed, or you don't feel good, or you need someone to cook for you, or you need something, somebody's going to be there. I'm going to be there for you.
Yeah.
I like to cook. All right. Um, the one
Oh,
thing I was going to say, one more last thing, is that this is just a thing in my head that, I'm in HEB and I'm checking out, right? And I go past the little section where they have the, for the people who want to do the environmentally correct thing and buy their little plastic bags. And they had an HEB rainbow bag. And I was like, oh, how cute. I should buy one of those. And then I was like, that is the stupidest thing for me to think. Like, that is enough, for HEB to put some reusable bags out that are rainbow colored. I mean, come on, people. We got to do better. So it's a little too late for rainbow bags, HEB. That's all I can say.
yeah.
So does anybody have a final parting thought before we're getting close?
Well, I was just going to say that along with the rights of gay individuals, I was against the war in Vietnam too, which got me in trouble with my dad because he was an army person. But
I
I
remember
fought for
those
that right
days.
too. I thought, no, 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 people dying over in Vietnam for all of this craziness.
Mhm.
So, the flower power child came out because, flower power was very predominant in the 70s. And so I wore it very proudly against the war in Vietnam. Uh,
That was a time in our history where I think the people of privilege thought we don't have anything to lose. So whatever we say is whatever we say. If you're gonna ship me off to Vietnam to get murdered, then I'm just gonna say what I think. And I think that was really when we realized that we could have a voice. So
Mhm.
So it went across the board with when there was injustice. I just thought, oh no, this is not right, and it did cause a rift in my early childhood with my dad, because the place to go at that time was Canada. Everybody went to Canada, and
Right,
he viewed it as
right,
not
right,
living for the country at that time. But
right.
no, the protest against Vietnam was very powerful also. And in fact, and I may still have one. I had a bracelet of my unknown soldier. Well, I had two. One came back. One came back. The other one did not. But the silver bracelets with the guy's name on it that they used to
mhm.
have in the 70s
The
that you can
POW
have.
bracelets.
Yeah, and so yeah, I still have one somewhere, or I did have. Uh, yeah, but I had two. One came back, one did not. But yeah, I was political. What could I say? I had my soapbox, and I was taking it wherever I went.
I
So.
love it. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Yes, it is, Lynn.
I was extremely opinionated and stubborn and just right in your face. And it got
I
me
can
into a
see
lot
that.
of trouble in the workplace because if I felt that, I was being passed over or whatever, man, I was ready to fight. It's like, come on. Uh, so
She's still ready
now
to fight, guys.
Come on, who wants to beef? I'm gonna beef
Uh,
you.
so I was ready to go, and now my blood pressure, I have to take it down. I have to take it down a notch now. So, but yeah, no, if you knew, I'm a totally different person now than when I was then. That's for sure.
Yeah, so am I. Age mellows you. It does. I
And
was the
health,
Angela. I
age and
was the
health,
age and
you know,
health. I was the
but
Angela Davis militant. I
but I
was.
never worried about getting arrested, and the thought never occurred
No,
me. I
no.
kind of when I felt that level of stuff was coming down, I kind of snuck out, because I knew my parents weren't going to come get me. They were not. They already told me. They said, if you ever land in jail, don't call us, and my mother meant it. She said, don't call us. She said, because we're going to leave you there. And she meant it. I had no problem knowing that she meant it. So there was no one for me to call at that time. So I just kind of, I surveyed the civil rights. Oh my God, I protested civil rights that was going on at that time too. Oh, and that got me in trouble with my dad because I had a lot of people of color as friends, and that did not go over well. I was always helping individuals out, taking them home, being transportation, got into a wreck with someone, and man, did he let me have it. Oh my God. But
And then you were
that's,
shipped to the convent. No.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, so yeah, I'm a totally different person now than then. But
Well,
it's in
in
me.
your heart,
It's
we
in
can
me.
tell. It's
And
in your heart.
it doesn't take much for it to come out. It really doesn't.
Wow. So, um, do you feel good enough to pray, Craig? I know you're in your very not feeling good.
Sure.
We're happy to pray with
I
you.
can always pray.
Okay.
Prayer, the
Thank you.
power of God and the power of prayer is always in one, whether they are ill or under the weather or not. And so we thank you, God, for this a special episode of God Talk. We've heard so many delicious things with our ears this evening. As always, it's a beautiful conversation, and we learn new things, and we think new ideas, and we have new thoughts, and that's the whole purpose of this activity. We pray that it continues and that people through searching may stumble upon this conversation and be inspired or learn something. That's why we're doing this. And so we're blessed to be in the community, each in our own way. And we just ask for the courage and the strength to keep going, to keep marching, to keep, keep speaking up, just to keep doing the things that we know that we need to do to be Jesus' eyes, nose, ears, hands, and feet on the ground here and right now. We don't have to look back 2,000 years to see someone that just turned things upside down because it wasn't what was going on, wasn't right. And we can do it right here and right now. Again, Jesus said we would do greater things than he did. So, with that attitude, we thank you for this conversation tonight and for each participant. And we ask that you hold us in light and love as we go through the rest of this week and until we gather again. In Jesus' holy name, we're praying right now. Amen.
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 Love you guys.
All
I love
Thank
you
you so much.
guys. Have a
Love you
great rest of
too.
your week.
See you
Be
next week.
safe.